Is freezing in liquid nitrogen and then deep frying in hot oil just a YouTube stunt? Or is it the inspiration for a better way to sear using ice? Maybe it's both. You might think the secret to a perfect crust is searing as hot as possible in your favorite pan over a ripping hot grill. Or maybe you prefer using a blowtorch as a way to get the most intense heat possible.
But here's the issue.
No matter how hot you go, the heat you need to create the Maillard reaction keeps diffusing deeper into the meat, overcooking the layer beneath your crust. Even a blowtorch can't escape this problem. The only way to stop the flow of heat is with an insulator. Luckily, since meat is mostly water, we already have access to a perfect insulator. Ice. How good of an insulator? Watch this. I'm hitting this ice with a 3,600 degree flame, and my hand is fine. The ice absorbs all that energy, and until it melts, it can't get hotter than the freezing point of water.
Yes, science!
This is the idea behind cryo-searing. By freezing a layer just beneath the surface, we create a barrier that protects your perfectly cooked steak from overcooking, just like this ice protected my hand from being absolutely torched. Let's put this to the test in the most extreme way possible. Deep frying is the fastest and most even way to sear a steak. Inconvenient? Yes. It's a lot of oil, but that's why it works. The oil stores a huge amount of heat energy, and the turbulent convection can dump all that energy into every part of the meat tens to hundreds of times faster than other ways of searing. The result speaks for itself. Cooking with liquid nitrogen is exactly like deep frying, except in the opposite direction. With a boiling point of negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit, it's as far below freezing as deep frying oil is above it, and it transfers heat out of the meat even faster than oil transfers heat into the meat. In fact, liquid nitrogen boils at such a low temperature, I can actually stick my hand in it without it freezing. The warmth of my hand causes the liquid nitrogen to instantly vaporize, which creates a layer of insulating gas around my hand that protects it from the freezing cold. For a little while. This is the Leidenfrost effect. It's the same effect that causes droplets of water to skid around a ripping hot pan on a cushion of steam. Now to cryo-sear my steak, I need to figure out the timing. If liquid nitrogen and deep frying transfer heat at the same rate, then I can just freeze and fry for the same amount of time and they should cancel out perfectly. But if the rates don't match, I'm gonna either end up eating a frozen dinner or an overcooked one. To figure out the right timing, I need to know how fast liquid nitrogen will freeze this steak. Of course, it's difficult to see inside this steak as it freezes, but I happen to have designed and built the perfect tool to do just this. My combustion predictive thermometer. It has 8 temperature sensors, with 7 of them evenly spaced along the probe so that I can measure how fast the freezing front is moving through this steak. I've cut this steak as thick as it is wide so that it freezes at about the same rate from top to bottom as it does from side to side. And I can just poke my predictive thermometer all the way through the meat and let its TrueCore algorithm find the center. Now I can just watch the temperatures plummet in the liquid nitrogen. The meat freezes at over 10 millimeters per minute, about 200 times faster than your freezer. In less than 5 minutes, the core is frozen. In 8 minutes, the meat is nearly as cold as the liquid nitrogen itself. And if you tap it, it sounds like glass. And if you hit it really hard, it shatters like glass too. I have always wanted to do that. Shit. That was fun. Until I had to clean up the mess. All right, clean up. But freezing the whole thing solid isn't necessary or recommended. That's definitely voided the warranty. So, how much do we actually need to freeze? That depends on how long it takes to build flavorful crust. From experience, in a deep fryer at 400 degrees, that's about 2 minutes. And when I cut into this steak, you'll see the inevitable overcooked gray band. It's about 4 to 5 millimeters thick and ruining my otherwise flawless steak. Now, if you're inclined like me, you can do a bunch of math to figure out how much ice you'd need to cancel out all that overcooking. But the answer turns out to be beautifully simple. Just freeze it to the same depth that would otherwise overcook. And that holds true no matter how you're searing. Overcooking creeps inward at about 2 millimeters per minute while the surface is searing. So if your sear takes around 2 to 3 minutes per side, you'll end up with roughly 4 to 6 millimeters of overcooked meat beneath the crust. And since I know how fast liquid nitrogen freezes, I now have the timing for my perfect cryo-seared steak. Cook to medium rare as you prefer. 30 seconds in liquid nitrogen to freeze the outer 5 millimeters. 2 minutes in beef tallow at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Risking the survival of my predictive thermometer again, I can see the surface freeze, thaw, and recover to the starting temperature right on time as the crust reaches a deep mahogany brown and the steak is entirely medium rare from edge to edge. This steak is absolutely delicious. Is about as good a sear with as little overcooking as I think is possible. It is also wildly impractical. So, how can we do this without liquid nitrogen or an absurd amount of dangerous hot cooking oil? The goal is getting ice beneath whatever you're searing. How it gets there doesn't really matter. I have been experimenting with every way I can think of to make cryo-searing practical, and it turns out there are a few options. One is dead simple, but there's a catch. Another is more practical than liquid nitrogen, but still pretty extreme. And my final option, well, I think I've actually come up with a technique that will become part of my day-to-day cooking. The simplest option? If you already have frozen meat, just sear it. I've covered why and how well cooking from frozen works in another video, which I'll link to below, but it's worth showing again because it couldn't be more simple. Sear your frozen steak. Season it. And finish cooking it through low and slow. By searing and cooking from frozen, you get the benefits of cryo-searing, and you actually keep the meat up to 30% juicier than if you thaw it first. That is a perfect looking slice of steak. The only catch? Unless your meat is already frozen, you're looking at tomorrow night's dinner. Unless you have some dry ice. At negative 109 degrees, dry ice is cold. As dry ice sublimates, carbon dioxide gas creates an insulating layer that slows the freezing. So you're looking at about 10 minutes per side to freeze deeply enough. Not as cold as liquid nitrogen, but at least you can pick it up at your grocery store. Yeah, block of the dry ice, it's in the blue cooler there. The catch? It's not cheap. Thank you very much. Other than that, the technique is straightforward. After freezing the first side, you're going to sear it hot. Freeze the other side. Sear it hot. Then finish it low and slow without undoing your careful work. Works great. Great char-grilled crust. Perfect edge-to-edge doneness. But this is really more of a stunt for a fun backyard barbecue. When I pick up something special, like this 100-day dry-aged ribeye, I don't want to freeze it solid, I don't want to screw around with dry ice, and I don't have liquid nitrogen on tap. Amazing. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
So I was thinking about this problem, and I remembered something from growing up outside of Chicago. Like every other kid in my neighborhood, winter meant shoveling snow and salting sidewalks. The salting worked because as it dissolved, it lowered the freezing point of water so much that the ice would melt on all but the coldest days. And that memory was my answer to a more practical way to cryo-sear. If you combine enough salt with ice, water can get really cold without freezing. So cold that it can freeze the surface of this steak in 20 minutes. I'm really excited to show you. My technique starts with ice. I'll add 20% of its weight in salt and another 20% of its weight in water. This is my ice brine. At 4 degrees below zero, it's about as cold as ice and salt can get. Now that's as cold as a good freezer gets, but because water is so much more efficient at conducting heat energy, this freezes your steak about 10 to 20 times faster than your freezer does. In fact, it's so cold it feels like it's burning you. Over 20 minutes of ice brining, this will freeze my steak deep enough for a cryo-sear. And it's also going to evenly season my steak like a dry brine, but a lot faster. This ice brine is going to add almost as much salt to my steak as a dry brine would overnight, but it actually protects you against overdoing things because as the surface freezes, the flow of salt stops. While my beautiful dry-aged steak ice brines, I'm going to set up for a shallow fry. It's 90% as good as deep frying with a lot less oil. You can sear your ice brine steak as you like though. This is just what I felt like doing today. After 20 minutes, or longer if you want, exact timing isn't important here, remove the partly frozen steak. Blot it dry because hot oil and water don't mix. The oil should come halfway up the meat. Sear for 2 to 3 minutes per side. Just judge the crust by color. Add some herbs and garlic, baste if you're into that kind of thing. And finish cooking the meat through low and slow. This provides some time for the salt from the ice brine to finish diffusing deeper into the meat. It might lack the spectacle, but this looks as good as a liquid nitrogen cryo-seared steak. I'll slice it, sauce it, garnish it with a bunch of good things, and that is my ice brined and cryo-seared steak. Give it a go the next time you have a special cut of meat that deserves a perfect sear. And if you do try it, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day or night wherever you are.